Welcome to today's Explainer. Jump right in and imagine we're stepping into a philosophy masterclass, but instead of a dry textbook, we are diving deep into a profoundly grim, dark Gothic fable. We're going to unpack a brilliant Nietzschean allegory about the terrifying, yet ultimately liberating, journey from comforting illusion into absolute reality. And to really get the impact of this, we have to look at it from a very unique, unsettling perspective. We're watching this through the eyes of the main character's fading shadow, watching in sheer horror as its master, the Wanderer, steps out of the comfortable dark and straight into the blinding, unforgiving light of truth.
So, let's set the scene. Picture a landscape completely and utterly devoid of comfort. You can almost hear the hiss of the heat haze rising straight off the bone-white dust. It's intense. And this isn't just some physical desert, right? It perfectly mirrors a state of total psychological exposure. Our wanderer has dragged his shadow out into this barren wasteland, where the sun literally offers zero apologies and the earth offers no refuge whatsoever. It's a grim, desolate atmosphere, where all those artificial walls we build up to protect our minds, they've been completely pulverized into that chalky dust.
But, the journey actually didn't start out here. For 40 long years, our old cartographer lived safely in the city of gilded cherubim. He spent his days laboring in these artificial gold-leaf paradises, illuminating charts that promised eternal safety and divine order. They were beautiful, comforting illusions. But he traded all of that warmth for the bone-white dust. He traded a universe that seemed to care about him for an entirely indifferent universe, actively choosing total exposure and unadorned truth over the gentle, easy lies the shadow used to whisper to him in the dark.
Now, the rupture that caused all this began on a single, cloudless autumn evening. He climbs up to his observatory, instruments in hand, and notices a terrifying flaw. The stars above absolutely refuse to align with the sacred drawings of his fathers. Trembling there in the candlelight, he whispered a terrifying question. Why does the light of the heavens betray the beauty of our law? He tried to fix it at first, of course, desperately adjusting his instruments, hoping it was just a simple miscalculation, secretly terrified that the heavens themselves were mocking the sacred order he'd spent his whole life mapping.
And this is where his entire worldview completely collapses. Step 1, he tries to smother this massive cosmic crack by painting even more ornate paradises over it. But, as you'll see, you literally cannot smother accuracy with the weight of beauty. Then, step 2 hits him like a physical blow. He realizes the universe is utterly indifferent to human longing. It simply does not care about his beautiful loss. And so, he commits the ultimate heresy. He casts his life's work, all those sacred maps, straight into the furnace, and he walks through the eastern gate out into the wasteland.
Which brings us perfectly to the next brutal phase of his transformation: surgery in the dust.
Out there in the harshness, he completely strips away his old identity. He becomes a wanderer, kneeling down in the limestone dust with a jagged quill. And the text vividly describes the shadow twisting around his feet in the heat haze, just mocking him. With a hissing, rasping laugh, it asks, "Do you not tremble, hermit, to cut away the holy moss that has shielded your kind from the winter of reality?" The shadow desperately wants him to cower. It's hoping he'll feel the sting of his cold isolation and come running back to the shelter of those comforting fictions. It begs him to just leave the human soul alone.
But the crucial takeaway here is exactly how he responds. He absolutely does not cower. Instead, he applies the philologist method. Seeking only the unadorned truth, he takes up that jagged quill and acts as a master text critic. He holds the remaining holy scripts up to a dying light, intentionally bypassing the scribal errors and pious interpolations of 1,000 anxious years. He isn't looking for divine order anymore. He is systematically exposing the trembling, anxious human hands that forged every single so-called divine decree. He is literally cutting away the infection of comforting lies. This relentless surgical excavation leads us right to our next concept, the moral scraper.
Picture him now beneath this incredibly punishing sun. The wanderer seizes the ancient sacred words, good and evil, and finds they're heavy. They literally smell like the stench of historical accidents. And I love this metaphor. Just like a master art restorer, he starts scraping away the layers of cheap moral paint. He isn't destroying the canvas at all. He's removing the suffocating artificial layers added by generations of priests to uncover the original masterpiece beneath, a forgotten, raw, and bloody vitality that existed way before morality was ever codified.
Now at this point, the shadow is growing really desperate, shrinking back in the blinding light. It challenges the wanderer to a fierce debate, whispering,
Is it not madness to claim that what the meek call sacred is merely the revenge of those too weak to conquer fear? Without these laws, you have no free will, only chaotic instinct. The sacred laws give us the structure to choose. But the Wanderer just laughs at it. He argues right back that what the shadow calls free will under the law is actually just prepackaged obedience. It's a comforting illusion for the terrified. True will, he counters, means stripping away the safety nets entirely and forging your own values right out of the terrifying void.
And by mastering the vocabulary of his own thoughts, the philologist completely shifts his reality. The words that used to be unexamined chains, these sacred concepts that commanded him through fear, they're suddenly transformed into broken ornaments. They just become historical artifacts, totally curious and entirely explicable in their absolute smallness. Through this brutal linguistic surgery, he actually purchased the deed to his own intellect. He's no longer a subject of the text. He is completely its master.
And that brings us to the ultimate climax of this philosophical deep dive, the shadowless zenith.
The source text illustrates a really fascinating timeline of the shadow's destruction here. As the vertical sun rises, the twilight limits, those spaces where ghosts still whispered his boundaries and kept him safe, they start to fade away. The flickering artificial gloom of the gilded city is entirely consumed by the light. And finally, at the stroke of noon, there's nothing left but total, absolute exposure. The text describes the shadow whimpering as it withers away into the limestone dust, asking the wanderer one last desperate time if he misses the dark, if he misses the comforting, safe boundaries of his old world.
The Wanderer is now standing directly under the zenith, casting absolutely zero shadow. And with a roaring triumph that shatters the bone-white dust all around him, he delivers the ultimate answer to those fading whispers. I do not miss the dark, for I have embraced amor fati, the joyous love of my fate, exactly as it is.
Okay, putting our professor hats back on for a second, to truly grasp this profound path to personal mastery, we really need to understand amor fati. It is absolutely not just passive acceptance. It's the joyous, enthusiastic embrace of your fate exactly as it is right now. The good, the bad, the beautiful, and yes, the brutal. It is such a profound path to personal liberation because it completely kills any resentment toward reality. By genuinely loving the unadorned truth, the Wanderer removes the need for any kind of artificial paradise to make life bearable.
And from that intense love of reality emerges the will to power. Now let's be clear, this isn't about power or dominion over other people. It is the purely creative, internal force of self-mastery. It is the creative force to write becoming and mastery onto a blank piece of vellum that used to be the horizon. The horizon is no longer some limit drawn by a divine hand. It's a completely blank page. The wanderer is no longer an exile fleeing a lost paradise. Through this will to power, he becomes the sole architect of his own purpose, writing his own meaning onto an utterly indifferent universe.
And so, amidst the unmapped dawn, our fable comes to a close. The shadow, which was really the last remnant of fear, of societal conditioning, of comforting lies, finally dies away completely. The pioneer stands entirely alone in the blinding light of the noon of truth. Yes, he's completely exposed, but for the very first time in his life, he's completely, terrifyingly free. The bone-white dust is no longer a wasteland to him. It's a solid foundation upon which he can build a reality based entirely on the truth.
Which leaves us with the ultimate provocative question posed by this entire text. Are you ready to scrape away your own cheap moral paint? Seriously, what unexamined chains are still commanding you through fear right now? The journey of the cartographer challenges every single one of us to examine the gilded cherubim in our own lives, to bravely face the bone-white dust of reality, and to step out into the unmapped dawn as the true architects of our own purpose. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Let that question sink in.